5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Freeze! What even are those?
Those are battle bots. Bots designed to fight and destroy each other in an arena. This is why in our speech, first we're going to talk to you about the rules of battle bots and the tactics they might employ. Then we're going to look at specific examples to see what tactics are effective. Then we're going to turn to our live fight with this new knowledge. But let's start with rules.
So, with putting a bunch of large, dangerous robots in an arena to fight each other, of course, like Emerson said, we're going to need some rules. The main categories for these rules are design and judging. Design is the largest of the two sessions, so we'll start with that one first. For a bot's movement, there's a wide variety of options, with the only main two rules being that it goes over 4 miles an hour and it also does not damage the iconic BattleBots arena. For weapons, similarly to mobility, there's a wide variety, they can use almost any type they want, with pretty much the only rule being that it cannot damage the arena. For a bot's configuration, they have to be under 250 pounds and be able to fit through the arena's door, limiting them to be 8 feet by 8 feet. A BattleBot's pilot must also be able to have control over every single function inside the BattleBot to prevent as many accidents as possible. For judging, BattleBots are judged based on these three factors: aggression, control, and damage. Aggression is based on how bold or risky the attacks of the BattleBots are. Control is based on how well the BattleBot can attack the opponent's weak points. And damage is based on how efficient the weapon of the BattleBot is and how well the BattleBot takes damage. So now that we know the rules, we can take a look at now that we know the rules and how they judge, we can take a look at the fundamentals.
To begin with, we have the base of the BattleBot, known as the chassis. And there are two main characteristics within these chassis, and that's the shape of the chassis and the level of armor. Our first example is Minotaur, which is a box chassis. It's a very small, compact build that allows it to outmaneuver its opponent and find little weak spots in order to slowly wear down the bot over time. Now, the second one is Wedge chassis, just above. The Wedge chassis shown here is from Warrior Clan. This specific bot is meant to go underneath the opponent and trap or at least slow it down, allowing the drone to come above and to descend and do the most of the damage. Now the next portion is the level of armor. Now our first example is Witch Doctor, one of the best bots out there. Now it has light armor, allowing it, similar to the box chassis, to outmaneuver its opponent and mainly prioritizes to get out of the way of danger rather than actually blocking the danger and absorbing it. And our final example is the heavy armor, shown as the Chomp's 2020 model. And Chomp's 2020 model is a very slow walker, and because it's so slow, it has very little movement, and it needs to protect that. And it prioritizes that by getting sheet metal on the sides in order to prevent other opponents from crashing into it and slowly disabling its movement. And it has a lot of armor on the top section in order to help prevent it being attacked too much, because very slow bots are going to constantly be hit over and over again, and it needs that heavy armor in order to stay alive and be able to take down the other bot. Now onto movement.
So there are a couple types of ways that bots might move. One of them is by flying. There are two ways a bot can do this. The first way is by having a propeller like a helicopter. A flybot might also use jet propulsion. They often use both, as you'll see in an example later. Now these flybots tend to be a secondary bot, meaning there's another main bot in the arena on their team. Now this main bot's goal is to slow down the opponent's bot so the flybot can come in and attack weak areas. Another way they might move is by walking. The reason why walker bots are allowed the extra pounds that Joe mentioned earlier is because their systems are more complex, so they require more weight to work. These bots tend to be slower because of this extra weight, so they use more powerful weapons and more armor. A final way a bot might move is with wheels. this is the most common way, just because the wheels are the easiest to implement, and they also allow for the most mobility, meaning a bot with wheels is going to be able to move around the arena easily and target weak areas. Now let's move on to weapons.
Arguably the most important part of a BattleBot is going for the kill. And going for the kill is the entire goal of a BattleBot. You want to eliminate the opponent either by knockout, which is making them immobile, and there's a countdown, or it goes to the judges, as Joe talked about earlier. So the first type of weapon that some bots use for this, and one of the most effective, is a horizontal spinner. And a horizontal spinner uses a beam and it just spins. And the more and more it spins, the more energy and stored power it has. So when it collides with another bot, all that energy is transferred and can do a lot of damage. Similar to this is vertical spinners. And there's two types of these. There's upspin and downspin. Upspin is a similar type of beam in the front that spins upwards. And this has the same amount of energy and power, so it's also very effective, but it also can hit the opponent upwards, and this can do a lot of damage. Downspin uses a saw instead of a beam, and it prioritizes cutting into the bot with the energy from the spinning rather than just packing a big punch. Hammers are less effective because the only energy they have is from during the swing. So it doesn't have as much as the spinners that gather more and more power and energy as they spin. Next up is the axe, which is very similar, and instead of smashing the opponent from above, it prioritizes sharpness to cut into the bot. A flipper uses a hydraulic press, and it gets under the opponent and then flips them up. And this can send them many feet into the air and can do a lot of damage by using gravity instead of directly attacking them. Crushers they use a wedge to get the bot under the mouth, and then a hydraulic press pushes the mouth down, and the teeth-like spikes puncture the top. And this can do a lot of damage, but normally isn't the most effective because it doesn't work against some bots, such as bots that may not fit, like this bot here. So now that we know the fundamentals of BattleBots, let's look at a couple examples and talk about why they may or may not be effective.
Just off the bat here, notice how slow the walker bot is in comparison to the bot with wheels.
This is because walker bots are allowed to have an extra 250 pounds on top of the original 250 pounds, which allows for more defense, but usually makes them much slower.
Also, notice how the wheel bot is taking its time to target weak points. That is the strategy that wheel bots typically want to use.
And as you can see here, as it's going in for the rush, the metal plating around the outside of Chomp is protecting it from Gamma 9 smashing into it and potentially damaging its legs.
And in that same part, you could see the hammer, the main weapon of Chomp, came out. And normally hammers aren't the most effective, but with this combination of a lot of armor in like a stationary, it waited for the opponent to come in and then smashed out that hammer on the opponent and actually did a lot of damage. So let's look at one more example.
Just notice that we have a fly bot here, but it's not the main bot like I talked about. The main bot is a wedge to try and slow it down. You can also see here that when fly bots get hit, they are very weak and easy to be destroyed. This is the main reason why a lot of people don't want to use them.
As you can also see, now that the drone has been taken out by Hypershock, the only way that Warrior Clan can win is by using its wedge to get underneath Hypershock and trap it from moving.
And you can see the weapons in this clip. We have this one does not only have a rake, it has a vertical spinner with upspin, which is the most effective, while this one just has a wedge. So it can do a lot more damage than the opponent and can get it the victory.
Okay. Good more time. Okay. So as you can imagine, there are probably hundreds of possibilities for a BattleBot configuration. Some are bad, and some are good, like we just talked about. When we make our own BattleBot, we need to determine what characteristics not to use. To do this, we can look at some bad BattleBots.
Alright, it's up.
So one of the worst characteristics not to use is to have a bad defense to movement ratio. Or in other words, your BattleBot is very slow, but also pretty unprotected. This can be seen in a BattleBot called Radioactive, when it faces another BattleBot called Tombstone. As you can see in this clip, Radioactive cannot move that fast. And because of that, Tombstone got a big hit off of Radioactive. As you see, Tombstone is also zooming around Radioactive because of how unmaneuverable it is, but it's also getting hit after hit, showing that it's also not very protective. Radioactive shows us that having a bot that is unprotected, but also fairly unmaneuverable, is a bad combination. Next up, one of the worst things you don't want to do is to have the base too high off the ground. This is to prevent a flipper from getting under and flipping the bot up in the air, which could possibly cause severe damage from the fall. This can be seen in a BattleBot called Stinger, when it faces another BattleBot called Bronco, and Bronco is a flipper. So as you can see right here, Bronco got under Stinger and flipped it in the air because Stinger's base was too high off the ground. Bronco got under Stinger one more time and flipped it out of bounds, allowing Bronco to win. Stinger shows us that having a base too high off the ground will most likely lose the battle if they ever face a flipper. And lastly, one of the things you don't want to do is to have a BattleBot that cannot reorientate itself when it is flipped upside down. This can be seen in a BattleBot called Kronos. Kronos' main weapon is that its outer shell here spins really fast. This can pack quite a punch once it makes contact. However, if Kronos was ever flipped upside down, it would have no way to correct itself. Because of this, if Kronos ever faced some sort of flipper bot, it would most likely lose. So now that we know bad things do to the BattleBot, we can take a look at your guys' BattleBot.
Yeah, so we sent out a form, and we let you guys design your own BattleBot beforehand. And the armor you chose light armor, so it's very maneuverable, and you chose a wedge shape. This is a great choice because maneuverability is huge in a BattleBot fight. So that's great, and the wedge allows you to get under your opponent and control them. You also chose a bot with wheels instead of flying or walking. This is good because it's fast and can move around the opponent to find the weak spots and then target those weak spots. The weapon you chose was a crusher. So the crusher allows the wedge to slide under the opponent, and then the hydraulic press pushes it down. These spikes can do a lot of damage. But it wasn't necessarily the best choice because against certain bots that don't fit in this area, it is a lot harder to actually win with this. We also chose to have a mini bot, which is not a bad choice because it also has a flamethrower. So while the opponent bot is fed up with this bot, the mini bot can drive around and do more damage, which can help you win that battle. So now that we've seen your bot, let's see what we would have done instead to make a really good bot.
Now, to begin with, we always start with a chassis. And we found that the most effective chassis was similar to your design, was a lightweight bot with a wedge in the front to allow it to outmaneuver its opponent and be able to get under the bot and lead it to its main weapon in order to shred through it and slowly win the fight.
Like Andrew just said, we want our bot to be very maneuverable. Naturally, that means we pick wheels.
And the weapon we chose would be the vertical spinner with upspin, because this has a lot of power and stored energy to unleash on the opponent, and it can hit them upwards and is probably the most effective weapon. So now that we know a lot more about BattleBots, let's get back to this fight and let's see what
I want you guys to pay attention, because if this battle is not a win by knockout, you guys are going to have to judge based off of the factors Joe mentioned earlier. So let's start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fight. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Battle is over. So, I want you guys to take a little bit of time to think and decide who won based on each of those categories. Now let's see how your guys' answers compare to us. Let's start with Joe.
Okay. So clearly, I think the damage is pretty equal between them because Witch Doctor knocked off all of Bronco's pieces, but Bronco also knocked off all of Witch Doctor's pieces. So I would say it's a fair tie for that part.
When it comes to control, which is how the bots drive and move around, I believe it goes to Witch Doctor. Witch Doctor did a better job of trying to target Bronco's weak pieces, while Bronco just mainly sat around waiting for Witch Doctor to come to it. So I think Witch Doctor is the point there.
And for aggression, Witch Doctor obviously was moving around quite fast and constantly going for it, whether it was towards the front of the bot of Bronco, which is incredibly dangerous, or going around the sides and outmaneuvering it. Therefore, we believe that Witch Doctor was the winner.
So since Witch Doctor won twice, due to the points, well, Bronco only won one, that means Witch Doctor is your winner. So in conclusion, during this speech, first we taught you about the fundamentals of battle bots, which is the rules, the main one being don't hurt the arena, and the chassis, whether the shape of it, how much armor it did. We determined that the best one is a wedge chassis with light armor. Then we talked about the ways you can move. We determined that wheels are the best way. We also looked at weapons, and we determined that the best weapon was an upspin spinner. Then we looked at specific examples, and then returned to our battle with Witch Doctor winning. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.